I was in Edinburgh recently to run some errands. The people were nice, and the city was mouth-watering. But one bad thing I picked up on while I was there was the tap water. It tastes like water, for the most part, but there's this tinge of bitterness to it, which I find makes it taste less like water. Of course, my idea of normal water is my own preference, but the fact I can distinguish between nice and bitter water means that there is a difference. After some digging, this specific case is to do with rocks, pun intended, and this difference is called hardness. In England, where I'm from, most of the rock is chalk and limestone. Both these rocks are weak and contain calcium carbonate. Water is a solvent, meaning that when it falls as rain and percolates through the ground, it carves through the weak English rock and the carbonates dissolve into it, giving it a harder, less acidic taste by making it more alkaline, which is the taste I'm used to. Relative to England, Edinburgh also has some scattered sedimentary rock, but significantly more igneous rock like basalt and andesite. Why? Volcanoes. These rocks put up much more of a fight against water than the sissy English geology, so dissolve less, leaving the water less alkaline, giving it that bitterness I found. If we assume that rainwater is pure water and has a pH of 7, which it isn't and doesn't, this technically means that Scottish water is purer than English water, which you could deem as more normal. But does this even matter? What is tap water like outside of the UK? How is bottled and spring water treatment and fluoride and chlorine affect hardness? Yes. As in, yes, it does matter. The trace elements in tap water are usually good for you, but also affect its taste. Iron adds a rusty or metallic taste. Calcium is almost sweet and is described as smooth. Bicarbonates, which we found in England, are alkaline and taste flat. Magnesium, alongside sulfates, are bitter, especially in salt form. Table salt is salty, and silica doesn't do anything. Note that water hardness is a measure of mineral density rather than taste, so they all make the water hard. Here's a cool map of the UK and how hard the water is. As you can see, there is a stark difference in hardness between the north and south due to hard and soft geology, and there is a correlation between mountains and softness that we'll come back to in a minute. The softest water is difficult to pinpoint, but it's somewhere really far north, and sadly the hardest water can be found in Swindon, not Bath, so I can't make the joke I was going to. You'd think that water would be softest in mountainous regions, since that was a pattern in Britain, and because the hard rock that creates soft water is also what physically allows these gargantuan stalagmites to stand up on their own. And you'd be half right. The water from snowmelt is classed as hard, but aquifers exist, and this groundwater has plenty of time to soak up all the minerals of its bathtub, creating some of the hardest water on the planet. In fact, this region of the States has the hardest water globally because of this, despite being just by the hard rocky mountains. Up until now, I may have implied that hard water is better than soft water, which isn't entirely true, so let's cover why. First of all, hard water doesn't always taste better, since some trace minerals have unappealing flavours, and taste is subjective anyway. Despite being subjective, a blind taste test was held in the UK in 2008 by the BBC, which awarded Severn Trent Water the prestige of the UK's best tasting water. This is in an area around Birmingham which has moderately high water hardness and decently high magnesium concentration, so won despite its bitterness. And more interestingly, last place was awarded to Wessex Water in Bristol and Bath, which also has high hardness. And even more interestingly, this test was repeated as a survey last year, where Bristol and Bath won second place, behind Scotland. Why do I bother? But there are also some weirder substances that you can find in tap water that contribute to water hardness. Fluoride is another flavourless mineral that you can find naturally in tap water, but is also often added artificially. Plenty of evidence has been found for the inverse relation between fluoridation and dental hygiene, meaning even minuscule amounts of fluoride in tap water can greatly decrease tooth decay and prevent cavities, although fluoride is weird because it has some worse effects at high exposure. However, a lot of these studies are controversial or invalid, and all of these effects take shape way over the set concentration limit by the WHO, so the amount of fluoride in your tap water is something you shouldn't worry about. Globally, over 400 million people receive artificially fluoridated tap water, most of which live in North America. One thing to worry about in your tap water is lead, which is conveniently tasteless. It can end up in tap water the same way copper does, so it's less common in harder water, and the metallic taste of copper can sometimes be a telltale sign of lead. It has an incredible range of health effects. Lead isn't found naturally in water. The main culprit is often lead piping, which was used up until the 1970s when concerns around toxicity led to bans. So lead can be found in older houses and water supplies today, but these have been mostly replaced or counteracted with corrosion inhibitors, which is not what happened in Flint, Michigan in 2014. Following a financial crisis, the city of Flint's water source was changed from Detroit water to the Flint River to save money. Detroit water sources its water from Lake Huron and the Detroit River, and is a much more established utility. Flint River still contained lead piping, which wouldn't have been a huge problem if it weren't for the river's high chloride levels from dissolved road salt, increasing the corrosivity of the water and leaching lead into the supply 19 times faster than from Detroit piping. Authorities didn't put corrosion controls in place to prevent the lead leaching, and also neglected water treatment, so the water also contained trihalomethanes,
a chlorine byproduct causing cancer,
and Legionella bacteria. Residents complained about the taste, appearance, and smell of the water, more specifically about how it tasted like, quote, a cold metal coin. This metallic taste was probably thanks to the copper and iron in the piping leaching alongside the lead. Flint River stems from the northeast of Flint and flows through an area of clay plains before reaching Flint. Clay is easily eroded and broken into calcium and magnesium, which make the water at Flint moderately hard and smooth or bitter in taste. Detroit River, stemming from Lake Huron, has similar bedrock, so has similar hardness to Flint. Without the lead and dirt and gunk, it would be difficult to tell these sources apart by taste. Anyway, the reason tap water tastes the way it does sometimes is because of a bunch of minerals and metals and salts and chemical toothpaste and sometimes, but really hopefully not lead. But if so, you could blame your water provider the next time you fail a maths test. Subscribe and stay hydrated.